Welcome to Season 6 of the Up To podcast. 9 years ago, Up To was formed as a live event series showcasing leaders who are as humble as they are successful. The humility piece is extremely important as we identify leaders who can inspire others. We try to focus our interviews on the non-business aspects of their lives, and in doing so, we have found there is a real thirst to explore their hearts and minds in atypical ways. Our host, as always, is the founder and creator of Up To, Adam Kaufman. And on this episode, we are joined by Phil Ciano. Stick around, we'll be right back.
If you're a business owner, an executive, or a rising member of a management team, I don't have to tell you about the importance of having team members and partners you can trust. A firm that I've worked with for years and have trusted myself to refer my colleagues to is VividFront, an award-winning digital marketing, branding, and website development firm based in Cleveland, Ohio, but with clients all over America. VividFront's focus is on scaling brands digitally. They create holistic, return on investment centric strategies and solutions for middle market companies who want to grow. They do paid advertising, influencer and social media marketing, e-commerce strategies, lead generation websites. I could go on. Their expertise is expansive, and their tactful leadership team, all of whom I know, has the entrepreneurial experience to turn ideas into revenue-producing business plans. Yes, I am reading a script, but I will tell you that I sought VividFront out for this podcast because I already believed in them, seeing what they did in the marketplace. So if you're seeking a partner to take your business to the next level, or if you're looking for an opportunity to work for a top agency with an amazing culture, truly an amazing culture, check out their website at vividfront.com or send me a note and I'll introduce you to my friends who run the company there. VividFront, great organization. Today's guest is a highly regarded commercial lawyer and private equity executive who has built an impressive career spanning over 25 years in business, healthcare, and sports law. Most recently, he found himself in the owner's box in an English Premier League soccer game, for as the managing partner of Bright Path Sports Partners, he represents an ownership group of professional team now competing in the most competitive soccer league in the world. Wow. What that must have been like. I can't wait to talk to him about it. Ipswich Town, the team he's a part of, faced Liverpool, somebody else's favorite team, one of the most storied and valuable teams in the world. Bright Path Sports is the first ever private equity and advisory firm exclusively dedicated to raising and deploying Native American capital into professional sports franchises, into the sports facilities, and related opportunities. Our guest's professional journey is marked by his dual role in law and finance. He's a founding partner of Ciano and Goldwasser LLP, a national sports law and deal boutique that represents a diverse clientele, including public and private companies, global talent agencies, and diversified investment funds. His expertise in sports law is particularly noteworthy as he has represented and co-led multiple investment groups seeking both majority and minority positions in multiple professional sports leagues. Both charming and super hardworking, I've admired him for more than 20 years. And others are now seeing these admirable qualities, for he is increasingly invited to speak in front of all sorts of groups around the country and abroad. Our guest today graduated from what we call the Harvard of Ohio, Wittenberg University. He earned his law degree at the University of Illinois, where he was a leader both on the field and in student government, in both places, I might add. Phil Ciano, welcome to the Up To podcast.
Adam, thank you for having me, and I'm honored to be here today, and it's a lot of fun to be here today, so thank you.
What have you been up to?
Well, a whole lot of a lot, but I find myself here in D.C. this week for the Sports Business Journal Dealmakers Conference. And then I'll be on my way to New York City tomorrow for a pretty cool event at the Museum of American Finance.
You're speaking at that conference, I think.
I am speaking at that event. The Museum of American Finance is based in New York City, and each year they have a specialized program, and tomorrow's program will be investing in sports. So I'll be on the panel there and sharing our story.
You're an appropriate panelist.
Thank you.
Where did the idea come from to invest in professional sports, specifically a soccer team, a football team as it's locally called over there? How did that come about?
Yeah, it's like most things in life, it's a journey. You don't wake up one day and then say, hey, let's put together a group to acquire a significant stake in an English football club. But my journey, as you indicated earlier, has always been the law side of the business. So when I graduated from law school, some years ago, by the way, my little sister married a professional baseball player. And his agent was a legendary MLB agent by the name of Ron Shapiro, who actually is right in the backyard here in Baltimore, Maryland, is still a mentor and a dear friend to this day. Mm-hmm. He got me very much deeply into sports on the talent side of the business. And I became a licensed agent. I'm still a licensed agent to this day. And I kind of took that into a different direction, Adam, and used my law career to represent agents and agencies in their interagency transactions and disputes in front of the Major League Baseball Players Association, the NFL Players Association. Slowly but surely, that evolved into having more and more groups come and have me help them put together syndicates, as we call them.
Groups of investors.
There you go. To acquire either minority interest, passive minority interest in professional sports, media, entertainment, or control acquisitions. From there, we'll get to, was born Bright Path Sports Partners, separate and apart from the law business, the private equity side of what we do. And our first portfolio company was a little football club dating back a couple hundred years, about 55 minutes outside of central London, a little place called Ipswich.
So you had this fondness for sports early on. Your sister marries a baseball player. I have a feeling you already liked sports just personally, like a lot of young men do growing up. But then you've been able to keep sports as a part of your professional life, now to this extremely high point of owning a professional team, a soccer team in the Premier League. But how did you get the idea to go after, I mean, you're American, right?
Right, we are.
You didn't play soccer growing up.
Never. Our high school did not have a soccer team.
Yeah.
Lake Catholic High School, I'll put a plug in.
So how on earth are you now the managing director of a major investment group now in the Premier League? How does that happen?
Great question. So yes, always a passion for sports. Growing up in the Midwest, growing up in Cleveland, played all sports growing up. Played football
other
in
than
high
soccer.
School and college. Never played soccer.
Right.
And as we now call it, global football. And then, what happened with the Ipswich acquisition, to go to your question, is we had put together Bright Path about 3 years ago. And we were in the process of down to one of two bidders to acquire a control interest in a Major League Baseball team. We had raised the equity. We had an executive advisory board that we had assembled, and we were on the road raising capital, raising additional capital for that.
So in this case, we is Bright Path. You already had formed this group, and then you were going after a baseball team in this case.
You're exactly right.
Got it.
And in the context of that, we had been connected with a pension fund out of Phoenix, Arizona, who wanted to make increasing investment in professional sports. We gave a presentation, like you often do when you're raising capital, as you know, and we gave the presentation to the pension fund consultant, which by coincidence happened to be based in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
At the conclusion of that presentation, the guy that represented that consultancy, a man named Edward Schwartz, who we owe a lot to concerning this Ipswich investment, said, hey, guys, I got good news and bad news.
We're passing on the baseball deal.
Right.
Okay.
We are passing on the baseball deal, but we own a soccer club, English football club in England,
Right.
which is currently in League One. So do you know anything about the English football pyramid? Or
I do. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So should I don't know if you're
No, I understand. So this is like
Yeah.
in the third level of the professional league, and unlike in American sports, you get promoted if you finish the top of a lower division, or you get relegated if you're one of the bottom teams. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This particular team had just been promoted from League Two to League One, and they were looking. The pension fund had acquired this team pre-COVID, and they were looking to bring in additional investor capital to see whether they could take the club from League One to the Championship League, which is
Still
rank.
the second level from the top. So, okay, so that answers the question. I didn't know that. So you actually were like pitching somebody on your project. They said, no, thank you, but we got a really compelling project you might want to get involved in.
You're 100%.
So that's awesome. So how do you decide what to say yes to and what to say no to? I planned on asking this later, but I love asking busy people who are stimulated by so many different opportunities.
Yeah.
Like, how do you know when to like jump into something versus just a quick pass, or you look at things for a long time? I know there's due diligence, but a lot of quick answers have to be made or reached in terms of no thank you, not interested, or oh yeah, let's learn more. Like how do you do that?
Yeah, it's I'd say it's more of an art than a science. I used to have a lot of hair on my head. I don't anymore.
Don't trigger me. Why are you bringing up hair?
But essentially, there was an old lawyer when I first started practicing law 26 years ago.
Chad Brenner's not that old.
No, it'd be great if that was the one. It was close to Chad. His name was Tommy Loby. I'll never forget this. 26 years ago, I'm practicing law, and he pulled me to his office, and he said, you'll make your money not from the deals you do, but for the ones that you say no to. Why is that? And I'm a big fan of multitask and efficiency, but there's a great book out there too by a guy named Steve Schwarzman, who's founded obviously Blackstone, in the book What It Takes. I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't read it, but very familiar with him and that story. Yeah.
And the concept behind this, Adam, is that whether you're working on $1 million deal or $1 billion deal, the same amount of effort, if you want to do it right,
Yes.
the same amount of effort, concentration, resource, time, energy that you put into something is going to be required.
Yes, small or big. Yeah.
So find the thing that is worthy of your time and pursuit and your energy and resource, and put everything into that and go for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard though. Like, Warren Buffett described that as when he was approached about maybe having Berkshire buy a company that wasn't that huge. He said, that's kind of like jumping off a pancake. Right. I love that phrase, that simple phrase. Like, it doesn't really move the needle. But it's hard, though. Like in venture capital, in my day job, we have something that we, with humility, call the anti-portfolio. And the anti-portfolio, a lot of people brag about what's in their portfolio. But our anti-portfolio is things we passed on, that we missed, that we should have jumped into. So it is hard to know. I mean, I don't know if you've ever passed on something you wish you hadn't, but our anti-portfolio includes some companies that, boy, I wish we would have jumped into. So do you have anything that you wish you would have?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll get to that in a second. On the Ipswich thing, what was interesting, and you being a Cleveland kid as well, transferred, what we liked about this club was of all the clubs we had looked at globally, Adam, and we had gone to Brazil, and we had gone to Italy and France and Portugal, and we looked at U.S. teams in the USL and the MLS, and what caught our eye about this particular club, Ipswich Town Football Club, is it was a sleeping giant. Like our beloved Cleveland Browns, like our beloved Cleveland Guardians.
It's a good thing there's no relegation scenario in professional football. Right.
we would be in the NCAA right now.
Right. Division II.
Thank you. Wittenberg would be playing them this year.
Right.
And competing.
Yeah.
I hope we're going to edit that out, Todd.
Yeah.
But be that as it may, it was a sleeping giant, Adam, and it had seen this beautiful, glorious past. Two of the most historic and revered managers, which we call head coaches here in the U.S., in the history of English football, both of whom were knighted, one of whom led England to its one and only World Cup in the 60s. And it was kind of an industrial town that had seen better days. It was a 55-minute train ride right out of central London to Suffolk County, which is like a suburb of London. And there was something about this club, the history, the tradition, the honor, the integrity, the fans, which were undying loyalty, like you'd find here in D.C. or Cleveland, Pittsburgh, one of these towns that everything revolves.
Loyal fan base.
I got on a train. We said we'd come over and take a look at the club. My partner, Jake Ciano, and I, who's a football guy, he's the soccer guy to my baseball and NFL. And he said, there's something here, we need to go look at it. And we flew to London. We got on the train at the Liverpool Street station, right there in central London. 55 minutes later, Adam, we get off the train and we walk over the tracks, and me being a baseball guy, I felt like I was in Wrigley. I'm looking...
The neighborhood stadium.
You got a 30,000-seat stadium that sits in the center and core of a residential and industrial neighborhood.
People walk to the games, blue-collar people.
Everybody's walking to the game.
It's beautiful.
Wrapped in it.
So you must have had like some kind of hunch that there's some intrinsic value or some undervalued scenario that could, because you're doing this for money, not just a fondness for sport. There must be some belief in your stomach, in addition to the Excel spreadsheet forecast, which can always be made to look great. There must have been some belief. There's something here that we can build upon.
100%. I mean, it sounds cliche, but it's true. I never found Google. I never found Microsoft or WebMD. My investment thesis has always been in people. When we met the front office, the CEO, Mark Ashton, the CFO, Tom Ball, Luke Warren, the director of our equivalent of the director of pro player personnel, Andy Rolls, the director of player performance. When we met these people that were on the front lines of the organization, it starts with that sort of analysis. And you said, okay, we have the top executive team. It's clear in English football. That was clear, even when they were getting promoted from League One to the Championship League. Then from there, you look at the underbelly and the great work that the pension fund had done, and Ed Schwartz.
So there's the first point, culture. You notice something good, some good charisma, 3 or 4 executives, nice culture internally. I'm not even talking about what's going on the pitch, on the playing field. Just there's a good culture there.
100%. I remember before I went over to England, the pension fund consultant, Ed Schwartz, the control guy in this entire investment for PSPRS, flew Mark Ashton over to the U.S. Mark's
the CEO of the company, the team.
Of the team.
Yeah.
And he flew Mark over, and Mark spent a few days in Cleveland. And he met with the Cleveland Cavaliers front office. He met with some of the executives at the Cleveland Browns. He went around and he met certain executives and business
kind
people.
Kind of peers of his, yeah.
Peers, and try to sort of understand it. And Ed said, I want you to meet this guy. And I went down to the meeting, and I sat there for an hour in the conference room, and I was captivated by his leadership, his magnetism, his charisma, his values. I said to Ed after the meeting, when Mark had left to go back to his hotel, and I said, you know what's interesting? I would take that guy and I would bring him into the boardroom of any Fortune 100 company today. And those values and those precepts and concepts.
So dynamic leader. So you have a dynamic leader that gives you a lot of confidence. 100%. So you guys make this big decision, you invest, and then that still is before the Premier League,
100%.
The top league. And what does that feel like when this biggest probably financial decision of your life has this unbelievably positive, maybe even sooner than you expected, step up into the top level, the NFL, so to speak, of European football. What does that feel like when they get promoted? You get promoted?
Look, I'm a risk taker and a gambler by nature. I can't say I've ever made a $160 million bet, but we had some amazing limited partners that came into our Ipswich fund that believed in the same things that we believed in. All American investors raised 160 million US, put the money into the team, and by the grace of God, I was there on May 4th of this year and saw this team get promoted from the championship to the Premier League. And Adam, I can just tell you, it was equivalent to the Cleveland Browns winning the Super Bowl. That's the emotional.
So you were
impact.
You were in the park when
in Portman Road Stadium, the historic
last
Portman
game
Road.
of the season,
May 4th, promotion, people crying, people laughing, hugging. The field swarmed, notwithstanding the 5,000 warnings not to.
Right.
And it was very cool. They hadn't been back since 2002. It was a return to glory.
More than 20 years since they've been in this top flight. So how do you, I'm a soccer guy. How do you not drop everything and just move over there? I know you have another day job. You have a full service law firm. How do you balance your core business, maybe it's not even your core business anymore, your original big business, with this new, exciting, awesome, more limelight, more public sports business? How do you balance the two?
Well, first of all, I have incredible partners in both businesses.
That helps.
My partner, Andy Goldwasser, and I started Ciano Goldwasser 24 years ago. We grew up together as kids. Our fathers were partners at a law firm named Reminger & Reminger, based in Cleveland, Ohio, when it was 6 lawyers. Mm-hmm. It's now over 150 lawyers in 6 different states, and it's an incredible powerhouse. So there was this culture that I had with Andy and this familial bond that we've grown together in.
Yes, real comfort.
Real comfort. Having a partner like that allows you to pursue these dreams and passions at age 54 at the time when I launched 53 when we launched Bright Path is an incredible thing. I would say, Adam, that the juggle, because of that partnership and then the people around me in both firms, it makes it happen. As I mature in my practice of the law, my role is morphed, and no longer am I being asked by clients to do the day-to-day grind. Thank God we have a team of people that do those things on the deal side.
Well, that's part of good leadership and good management, is you find people who can take on those roles. I think when I first met you, you were still doing courtroom work.
That's it.
Which was appropriate when you were 37 or whatever the age was.
100%.
Yeah. So are you in the courtroom anymore, or you don't have to do that now?
I do a lot of sports arbitration.
I imagine you kind of enjoy that. I talk to surgeons who then become executives at hospitals, and then they miss the actual trade that they spent their life learning. So are you still able to kind of roll up your sleeves, so to speak, and get into the courtroom?
Yeah, my partners jab me a little bit when I have to take a deposition or do a cross-examination.
You're not good at it anymore?
Yeah, are you still good at that? I mean, you're a deal guy now.
Right.
But yes, I do love it. It gets the adrenaline going, and I'll be in a hearing in Los Angeles next week on a baseball case.
Okay.
Which is kind of cool.
So it's LA though. You got to put your makeup on, and there'll be cameras outside. It's a little different than the grind of
I wish.
a London suburb or Cleveland, Ohio. Now, I haven't forgotten. You said you'd get back to it. How about a deal that you passed on? Is there anything in your anti-portfolio that you'd be able to share? Because what I want to get at is, again, how do you decide? How does one decide to say yes or no to something in a world where we're stimulated by so many opportunities? We had to look at 8,000 startups to say yes to 125 with OVO Fund, and it's not easy. I think one of the hardest things is knowing what to jump into and what not to.
I think it's a great point, and we do that a lot now with emerging leagues and emerging startup businesses in sports, because the entire sports ecosystem has just exploded onto the scene. I would say when I hearken back to something that I was like, wow, we really missed the mark on that. A few years ago, we had the opportunity to invest in a professional bull riding team.
Bull riding?
PBR.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with PBR, but
not the league, but it makes sense because I know out west, bull riding's a big deal.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And so we looked at it, and not being from the West, not understanding the model, not being fans, because it starts with passion.
I can see why you'd pass.
Exactly. You could buy a team for $1 million, less than $1 million back in the day. They go in the tens of 20s of millions now, and
Wow.
a few days ago, TKO acquired the entire business as part of another roll-up for over $3 billion.
So what do you learn from that? Like, obviously you learned, wow, we should have done it, but are there any kind of transferable learnings into future analysis of opportunities?
Yeah, no, I don't. Actually, Adam, I don't even have a wow, we should have done it. Because I think if you have a discipline and a
Thesis?
and a protocol,
Right.
it's going to run the traps. Some deals you're gonna get that you otherwise shouldn't have acquired. Ipswich Town Football Club, through happenstance and other circumstance.
Good decision making, not just happenstance.
Yeah, 100%.
Good thesis.
Yeah, and others you're going to miss opportunities on. By the way, some deals you'll run through the gamut. You know this from being in early stage investing, that meet every single one of your criteria and fail.
Doesn't work. Right.
Some meet half of the criteria. You take a shot, and it's a 15x return. So I don't know how to measure that.
Well, professional bull riding, just as an example, and just in general, the increase in private capital into sports, broadly speaking, the NFL now allowing private equity money, for instance, maybe the thinking is, how do we identify other sports, or could be sports that could be professional sports, could be the next professional bull riding? Yeah, I don't know what that answer is, but maybe people in the back room in your shop start thinking about that, for instance.
Yeah, it is. And by the way, the opportunity in the venture, what I'll call the venture side of sports, away from the Big Four here in the U.S., away from the Premier League, I would say is in leagues, emerging leagues, Padel, Sail GP, which is a sailing league. You'll see things like the pool league. You'll see things like there's too many to recount right now, but it's emerging leagues is where it's at. But what you have to be careful about is what you said to earlier. What's driving the model? Is it the flavor of the day, or is there real content here? Is there real rights that are going to be generated? Is there real value creation?
Sure.
That's the hardest part for what we're trying to figure out in the venture side.
Looking out into the future, what can we do with this to monetize
100%.
it? I'm grateful that Calfee, Halter, and Griswold has once again agreed to partner with us. With offices in Ohio and Washington, D.C., this full-service national law firm focuses on all aspects of business and the law, including corporate and finance, intellectual property, and government relations. Let me be clear, I actually approach companies with whom I would like to partner. We just don't accept marketing dollars from anyone. I have been referring my CEO and entrepreneur friends to Calfee for years. I really believe in the firm. One of their notable practice areas is in mergers and acquisitions. And recently, for instance, I introduced a successful entrepreneur in the Midwest to Calfee when he told me that a European-based conglomerate wanted to buy his business. Calfee works with large corporations as well as privately held companies throughout the U.S. and Canada, and in Europe and Asia too. So whether it's selling your own business or the more routine needs of creating your first will or anything in between, this firm can really do it all in terms of legal needs. Once again, the firm is Calfee, Halter, and Griswold, and you can find them at calfee.com or on the Up2 Foundation website. So let's step back a little bit. Phil, you mentioned briefly your father was involved in a law firm that really grew. Did you always think you wanted to be an attorney? Or was that something you had to do, like dad's an attorney, so I got to be an attorney? Or like, what did you want to be when you grew up?
That's a great question. I spent my entire youth telling myself and my dad and anybody who would listen I would never become a lawyer.
Okay.
I was a business guy from day one. And when I graduated from college, I had a real great opportunity to work for a family business based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. A company called Harmony International.
Oh, yeah.
Corporation.
Ada, Michigan.
And
Harlan Wilson. God bless him.
My first boss and my first mentor, and I owe a lot to him, by the way.
I forgot about this connection we have.
We do. And he had a really cool business. So he was the international chief of White Motors and Westinghouse when he had come up through the ranks in the 70s and 80s.
So you were like a vacuum cleaner magnate for a while.
Vacuum cleaner, appliances, commodities, private labeling in the Middle East, Asia, and Central America.
So you were in business before you went back to law school. I didn't realize that.
2.5 years working as a trader, traveling the world, enjoying my passion at the time, and ended up getting engaged on the day before Easter Sunday to my now wife of 31 years. And blowing my knee out that morning in a volleyball game.
What?
Which then brought me to Cleveland, Ohio, before I was starting graduate school to get my MBA.
First of all, congratulations on 31 years. I didn't realize that accident happened at that inopportune time.
Which led me to law school, which is a weird transition. I was home that summer, rehabbing from knee surgery, getting ready to start graduate school. I had started graduate school at Tufts University at the Fletcher School of International Law and Diplomacy.
For business?
For business,
not for
and
law.
For international law and diplomacy.
Okay.
I wanted to stay in the international space.
Okay.
And as I was rehabbing, my dad said, hey, you're not going to lay around on the couch for 3 months before you go to grad school in the fall. Why don't you come down to the office and putz around and take photographs and interview witnesses and pick up files and learn, make a few bucks. And I went down, and after 3 or 4 or 5 weeks of that, I said, this is, it was like a drug. I mean, I was like, oh my God.
And you didn't even know that you were going to love it that much. I call this God's kaleidoscope, honestly. If you think about a kaleidoscope and all the little dots fit in a beautiful system, but in the moment, you don't know, like, why do you have this injury at this inopportune time? But then if you look back now 30 years later, how it all fits. I just think that's awesome. I didn't know this about you. So seriously, you were planning on staying in international business. Maybe you would have a law degree, but you would still be pursuing business. But you ended up starting this law firm. I mean, you had to navigate a curve in the road, this injury, back at home. Sure, you didn't want to be there. You didn't want to be injured. But you more than made the most of it, going to law school. And then did you start a law firm right away, or did you work in another firm first?
No. So we graduated from law school in Chicago, and my wife and I, at the time, we moved to Cleveland, where my roots were from. Her roots are from Detroit, Michigan. And I started at a large powerhouse political firm, an entertainment firm called Climaco, Lefkowitz, and Garofoli. They represented the Teamsters International, Sammy Davis Jr., many politicians, many lawyers. I got licensed here in D.C.
I've heard of that firm.
Yep.
You're Italian.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
It was a cool place to work. Let me just put it that way. And I learned a lot. And then I was there for 4 or 5 years. And then my partner, Andy, I told you earlier, we had kind of grown up together.
Long-time friends, yep.
He said, hey, I'm thinking about leaving. Would you like to talk? We sat down, and over lunch, we put an idea together that became a business plan that became a law firm. And we started off in an office about the size of this room with one assistant and one desk and a phone.
But even that's like taking
ring.
a risk. Like one of our first topics today, taking risk. Like you took a risk. It would have been easier to work in a firm and get a paycheck every couple of weeks, but you were swinging for the fences a little bit, starting your own firm, putting your name on the door.
Yeah, I think both of us knew that there was a pathway that had been paved for us at Reminger if we wanted to take advantage of that.
Okay.
My father was the managing partner at the time. He's now the chairman of the firm at 82. So that road was there. But to go to your great point, it was a risk-reward analysis,
Right,
number one.
right.
Number two, you go into a situation like that, your failures will be magnified, your successes will be diminished. We chose a different path, and we got lucky.
Have you always been comfortable with risk? Like, take a step back from this soccer team or starting your law firm. Those are two big risks. Would have been easier to say no and do other versions of that same work, but is risk existing in other aspects of your life? I think you said you like poker. Like, how do you... Not everyone can tolerate risk. Like, have you ever thought about that? Like, you're a very risk-tolerant person.
Yeah, I love it. I relish it. A lot of risks I've taken, I've failed. But there's been some incredible benefits that have come up. My wife of 31 years, we just talked about. I took a risk as a college junior. I said, I'm done with this place, Wittenberg University. I'm getting the heck out of my fraternity. I'm getting out of my bubble down here. I'm getting away from football. I'm getting away from it all. And I went to London to go study abroad, and I signed up for the Syracuse University London program. This beautiful woman walks in the first day. We were 20 years old, and I looked at her and I said, I have to find a way to meet her. And we dated. That grew into a nice little love story.
She met over in England. I didn't know that.
We met in London, England, which has been an interesting circle now that we go back there so often for work.
Right.
But that was a huge risk, Adam. Every risk I've taken, I think, I would say that the material successes that have come out, either personal, professional, or a result of really doing something against the grain or taking a risk. But yeah, from a child, I mean, playing my father, this probably isn't a good story, sorry, Dad, but we had a pool table in our basement. And he's a big gambler and a risk taker himself.
Okay.
And he would roll the felt out of a duplicate of a Las Vegas craps table on the pool table. And he had his 6 kids teaching, much to my mother's dismay, by the way, teaching us craps when I was
That's part of your
10
heritage.
years
It's
old.
part of the scenario you grew up in. No, that's cool though.
Yeah, so it's
acceptable to like gambling. That's cool.
It was fun. 21 years old, he took me there with my best friend and to Vegas and introduced me to the world of gambling, which was a lot of fun. Once in a while, I'll go out there and have a good time.
So risk now, that's a fun story in your basement as a child, but risk now professionally. You mentioned sometimes you've taken some risks that didn't work out well. Anything you could share or any learnings from something that didn't work out? We all face these inevitable curves in the road. I know I have.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of how we deal with them. Do we crash or do we successfully navigate into some new road ahead?
It's a great question. One interesting thing, when I had come out of the Climaco law firm, before Andy and I put our thing together, I had joined a office share with about 5 or 6 other lawyers.
Okay.
One of the lawyers was a mentor of mine growing up. And we were going to put our own business together. He was going to bring me in as the young protege. I was going to succeed to what he had built.
He's like a generation older at least or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, or a little bit less.
Okay.
And I took a big risk. I had left the law firm. I had joined that before Andy and I put our thing together, and the whole thing blew up. Character-wise and personality-wise, it was a marriage that wasn't meant to be.
Not a good fit. Okay.
Risk taken.
Yeah.
Failed.
So from that you learn it's really important to evaluate who you want to be a strategic partner with, whether it's a financial partner, shared office space, business-wise. Yeah.
In 24 years, I've spent as much time with Andy Goldwasser as Amy Ciano. Weekends, nights.
He's your professional spouse.
That's it.
Right.
You're married.
This show, the theme is leaders who are as humble as they are successful. And I say this in all seriousness, that you've remained humble in spite of all you've achieved. Like, how do you stay grounded, Phil, as you're hanging out with Ed Sheeran, maybe the most famous male musician in the world, watching a soccer team that you have an extremely vested interest in Europe? Like, how do you stay true to your original self, which I can confirm you have?
Well,
is that intentional or it's just who you are?
Well, first of all, thank you. I mean, I that's a huge compliment. I would tell you that it goes back to, I think, the family roots. My father came here as an orphan at the age of 9 years old from Italy. Mm-hmm. He didn't have anyone here. He didn't know the language. He didn't have any family. Mm-hmm. He refused to change his name, which prevented him from being adopted for about 1.5 years as he ran away from the orphanage every day. And I think
his last name,
Ciano,
if changed, it would have
gone to a better, an adopted name,
a more attractive scenario for adoption. Huh?
No, not that, Adam. It was as he was being interviewed as a 9-year-old kid to be adopted by these American families that obviously, during the interview.
The name would need to be changed. So
And
even at that young age, he refused.
he said, "I'll never change my name,"
Wow.
which turned away about 30.
You have that personality now. I mean,
Wow.
that's okay. So
I
keep going.
wish.
So
Anyway, he
you've remained
instilled
humble.
in us, and I just think the whole thing is the value system that he put into his kids was that all this other, I'll call them the shiny things, that are the trappings of the professional work that we put together are fleeting. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, it's relationships, it's family, and it's faith. And he instilled that in his 6 children. We're just trying to carry it on. So, I mean, it's great to have those opportunities that I have
Yes.
in this world that I live in now, but they're fleeting.
I mean, it's really refreshing to hear you say that. And honestly, it's the whole impetus to why I started this program. We've had like a Heisman Trophy winner on here. We've had the youngest general in the military. We've had public company CEOs. The most requested surgeon in the world have been on this program, but they're all humble. We all know the leaders who lead by anger or lead by memo or lead by fear. That's more common than the humble leader, the leader who is truly a servant leader. And I see that in you. So kudos to your parents, but also kudos to you for fulfilling that vision of theirs, because there's a lot of sons of immigrants who have a strong family ethos who don't follow in that path. So, like, who or what keeps you grounded now? Like, how are you reminded of this when you're in the trappings of the stuff of the success?
Yeah, I go back to my childhood home in Wickliffe, Ohio on Sunday at 12:30 after 11:30 a.m. Mass, and my mom's cooking sauce, and my siblings are there, and my nieces and nephews are there, and nobody gives a damn that I was with Ed Sheeran or with an NFL Hall of Famer.
Or on the Up To podcast. No one cares. I get it. That's good, though.
And we don't talk about this stuff, obviously, at the table. They're impressed by it, but
Right.
in a fun, loving way, not in a, oh, my God.
Not idolatry.
There you go.
Yeah. So do you think that...
Perspective.
Do you think you're doing a good job of instilling that same ethos into your kids, the next generation?
I'm trying as hard as I can every day.
It's hard, though.
Oh, my Lord.
Right.
18-year-old and a 23-year-old son. The thing that you see with success, and you've had this with your beautiful family, is with each generation, things get easier.
Yes.
Things get more accessible.
And ironically, we want to help them, and we want to make it easier, but we can't keep them in bubbles.
My father had a great way of me never knowing as a kid the level of success that he achieved. It was, everything from cutting grass to construction to roofing to concrete to blacktop to carpentry. I mean, we worked. That was the deal, and you paid for your own way as you went through, and it was the greatest gift he ever gave us.
So how do you think you're doing with that with your kids? And I say this not to just judge you, but to be self-reflective in our own life and my family as well. But if I was, for instance, talking to one of your kids right now, what would they say is most important to their father?
Yeah, I would
They were
say
answering honestly.
they would say the opposite of what I just said. I coddled them. I helicoptered. I opened up doors that I shouldn't have, and I'm trying hard. They're still young men.
Yes.
They're still paving their own way, which is great.
Still some formative years if they're 18 and 23.
Amen. Amen.
And looking out into the future, we've talked a lot about professional sports with private capital. What are you most excited about, maybe beyond that, even beyond Ipswich Town or another deal that's right in front of you? Like, what are you most excited about, broadly speaking?
Really excited about as we build our portfolio. We just closed on an investment 2 weeks ago in an enterprise called Cosm. And that's this new immersive sports entertainment venue, which is, think of the IMAX Theater.
Here in the U.S.?
Here in the U.S.
Okay.
First 2 venues are in Los Angeles and in Texas. But think of the IMAX Theater, Adam, in a smaller environment where you're immersed into the sporting experience. So licenses with all the Big Four in the U.S. and the English Premier League. And there's little cameras, 6 to 8 cameras about the size of a Kleenex box that are placed in these venues. And when you're standing in the theater, kibitzing and having a cocktail and enjoying this immersive experience,
without being at the arena,
you feel almost more ingrained and immersed in the experience than if you were there live. It's an amazing investment. We just closed on that 2 weeks ago. I'm going to Dubai in 2 weeks to go on the last diligence aspect of another amazing organization called Professional Triathlon Organization, T100, which is a global league based in London that's doing professionalizing triathlons in events all around the world. Dubai, London, San Francisco, New York, Las Vegas. We're making a strategic investment there.
So you're really into the sports venues, not just the sports teams.
Anything in the echo.
Back to the first one you were just talking about, that's for watchers of sports, fans of. I imagine the visualization improvements, like at the Sphere out in Vegas, how wonderful what you just described would be for the Cleveland Guardians baseball fan who can't afford to go to the game or something. I also like gamers. Gamers now go to arenas to watch famous gamers, which I can't believe.
It's amazing. E-gaming, something we haven't invested in and haven't been presented the opportunity. Huge participation, huge numbers.
So I see how busy you are, though. Like, I know your schedule today. I know where you woke up. I know where you're going to sleep tonight. You're extremely professionally busy. You're clearly choosing to be that way. Like, where do you want to take all this in your own life? Do you have a mental kind of, or with your wife, date in the future when you want to work less? Or how do you think about, what am I doing? This treadmill that begins at 0 every morning.
That's such a good question. It's funny. I had a family member who I took a few years ago to get diagnosed with ADHD. And we're sitting there with this psychologist, and I'm in the room with him. And as he's talking to us about it, he said, for example, your blank has it very, very deeply, pointing to me. And I was like, wait, ADHD? What are you talking about? What's
your relative, you mean?
Yeah, no, the counselor said, I could tell this guy has got it bad.
Right.
And I said, but wait a minute, I never was diagnosed. I don't have any medication for it, whatever. And he goes, no, you found your drug.
This is about you.
About me.
Okay.
And he looked at me, this counselor, and he said, your drug was the law, is doing deals in private equity, and it's what keeps you churning and focused and concentrative and juggling. So maybe I found my drug, Adam. I don't have a runway that ends. I'm 56. My dad's 82. He's still practicing law, and he's the chairman of a large law firm. I would like to dial it back and delegate more and elevate. But there's a lot more road to travel.
Yeah, I mean, there is, but not to get too philosophical. This wasn't even a planned topic, but I see in you like such an extremely, like you said, it's a natural drug. I can tell with your posture, you get excited talking about these deals. But I've met so many ultra successful people who I admired because of like the plane I went on with them, or the car they picked me up in, or the home of theirs we were vacationing at. But late in life, when I was dealing with them and they'd finally like open up a little bit more, maybe we're having a cigar after multiple years of relationship, they don't wish they did more deals.
Amen.
And like, I wonder, even in my own life, like, there's always another opportunity. There's always more deals to do. But to what end? We both have had friends who've passed away younger than anyone had planned. So what is all this for? Like,
it's a good point. Maybe.
And there's not like a right answer. It's
No.
just I'm getting your view on this.
It's a great analysis. I love getting philosophical. I would tell you that maybe at the end of the day, you can have the best of both worlds, where
that is the goal.
Maybe by creating something very unique and special, and by being able to enjoy the fruits of that labor,
Yes.
finding something that you could give back and make a lasting impact.
Yeah, like how does one find meaning in his life beyond financial metrics?
And it's things like, the work that I do with the American Cancer Society, being on the board. It's True Freedom Ministries in Cleveland, another great organization that ministers to the addicted and the homeless. So, you're trying to you're trying to balance this thing, Adam. I don't, it's great philosophical discussion. I think you nailed it. There is no right answer on it. Where is God going to guide you?
I guess we're always exploring it.
Always exploring it.
And with humility, I think it's easier to explore those topics. I've met a lot of real jerky, successful people who don't even take the time to reflect like this because they just think they're gonna do deals forever and they're racing, racing. And I just try to encourage my own peer group, our own up to group. Like, it's not all about the Excel spreadsheets.
I love that. I told you my father-in-law passed away last week, so I was in Detroit.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
For his funeral, no, thank you. And this was a financial powerhouse. He was CFO for Bethlehem Steel. He was the chief investment officer for the Mott Foundation in Detroit.
Wow.
Amazing guy, amazing background, Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan. He retired at 60 years old, 62, and devoted his entire life to a nonprofit called Helpers of God's Precious Infants. He devoted the last 24 years of his life, he passed away at 86, to a mission and a charity that he believed in.
See, this is what I'm talking about.
He said, it's over.
I say that not just to you, but to myself. Like, what are we doing?
Amen. He did it, and he
stopped at 60 to pursue that?
60.
And he had a quarter of a century doing his other meaning work?
He left an impact that I think I've rarely seen, even around the Titans that you and I have had.
I wish we could have had him on the program, back in the day.
Incredible.
But we need to find people like that, and you're someone like that.
Thank you.
Do you think, before we wrap up here, and it's amazing how quick an hour goes. I mean, it's just, I feel like we could do a whole series together. But
you're awesome.
What are you most concerned about as you map out like the next 20 years? Is there anything that really has you wondering how to handle or how to navigate?
You mean the personal and professional world? It could be either one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I figured you'd talk less about professional.
Sure.
That might be private, but whatever you want to say.
So on the professional side of the equation, I think there's a discussion, sort of an under whisper right now going on in the sports media entertainment private equity space that we've been talking about is, where does the bubble end?
Heightened excitement right now, big valuations.
We're in Washington, D.C. Josh Harris and David Blitzer, two of the most respected finance sports guys in the world, and I have the utmost respect for both. They bought the Commanders for $6 billion last year.
Wow.
Everyone said, where's the value? Where does it end? Well, 2 weeks ago, Stephen Ross sold a piece of the Dolphins. To Joe Tsai. These are smart, sophisticated, uber successful finance people.
Tough negotiators, you'd imagine. Yeah.
$8.1 billion valuation.
Kind of justifying the Washington football team.
Where does it end? And you look at the Cowboys. If the Dolphins are worth $8 billion, what are the Yankees, Dodgers, and the Cowboys worth? So what concerns me is there a bubble? Is there a peak? Where does it end? Or does it just continue?
Driving towards a cliff, knowing when to stop before you get to the end of the cliff.
Maybe that's something to think about. There's a lot of smart people that talk about that. On the personal side of the equation, what a great question. One I've never been asked. What concerns me? I get
like too many speeding tickets, for instance.
I have the highest risk insurance you could imagine. I'm not a good driver. I'm sorry.
We did some due diligence.
You guys nailed me. I will tell you that the thing that the thing that wakes me up and I go to bed at night is just my children. I want them to live a good life in a better place, Adam.
Well, you are living a good life, and you're making this show a better show by being with us today. I'm so grateful you took the time to do this.
Wow.
And I hope in the future you'll come back after you've bought your third or fourth team and won the Premier League title and maybe even Champions League. But in the meantime, thank you so much for being with us today, Phil. Congratulations on all you've achieved.
Adam, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's an honor. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Up To podcast. We aim to showcase super achievers who remain humble in the hope that their stories will inspire others to remain humble throughout life's journey. For feedback, guest suggestions, or any other inquiries, you can email Adam Kaufman directly at adam@up2foundation.org. That's adam@up2foundation.org. A special thanks to our longtime sponsors, VividFront and Calfee. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Up To wherever you get your favorite podcast. BLC Digital Strategies proudly produces the Up To podcast, located right outside the nation's capital in McLean, Virginia. Visit blcdigitalstrat.com for all of your podcasting needs. We'll see you next time.